Greetings builders and welcome to another top 3 video where every week I choose a topic and show you my 3 favorite builds of it. Today's theme is for those who like to be close and personal. I'm talking about the melee builds. And if you wanna try any of those, you can find links for POBs and complete guides in the video description. And if this video helps you, please give a thumbs up to support the channel. Thank you very much and let's get into it. In third place we have a super fast one. The Nightblade Flicker Strike Raider with the Ranger class. This is the kind of build where you can have it all. It easily achieves over 10 million DPS, it's super tanky and as you can see on the gameplay, incredibly fast. To list the pros of this build, I have to pretty much repeat what I just said. This is one of the most well balanced builds I've ever played. It has super speed, damage and survivability. It also has a satisfying gameplay with explosions and let's face it, Flicker Strike is just super cool. Now to list the cons, I'll start saying that this build isn't cheap. You need some mandatory unique and rare items that will exceed the divine price. Another issue is that you have little control over your character. This might be a problem on bosses like Queen Atziri and the Shaper, where you need to know which clone to attack and mind your position. Getting to the budget, this build is expensive and not a starter. You need at least 6 divine orbs to put it together. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. You need 3 mandatory unique items for this build. The first is the Farus Fur Body Armor, which guarantees that you always have your full frenzy charges on. Next, we also need a Yoke of Suffering amulet that causes all of our elemental damage to be able to shock enemies, causing them to take a lot more damage. Finally, we also need the Perseverance spell that turns tankiness into damage. It does that, granting 1% increased damage for every 200 of the lowest between armor and evasion. Good thing that this build counts with over 30,000 of each. For clear speed, this build is surely a 10 out of 10. And I didn't even need to tell you that. Check out this gameplay, this is some serious anime swordsman stuff. The boss damage is also great, especially when you can use your Berserk skill. As you can see, it kills guardians in less than 2 seconds, but I will only give it 9 out of 10 because this damage is reduced on pinnacle bosses when it's harder to stack our rage. For the survivability, I'll also give it 9 out of 10. This build has almost 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, high evasion, spell suppression, over 30% chance to block and high chance to avoid elemental ailments. I just took 1 point out because you have low life regeneration, making it vulnerable to poison. Next, in second place we have this tanky boy that is also fast and strong, the Boneshatter Juggernaut with the Marauder class. This build is perfect for the melee enthusiasts out there. Boneshatter hits enemies so hard that it hurts your own character, accumulating trauma stacks. For each trauma you're going to deal and take more damage. That's why it's important to gather both attack speed and armor to stack many traumas and sustain their damage. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its survivability. Even though you do damage to yourself, this build has so much armor that you won't feel a thing. Now, because of that, you might think that this build had to sacrifice speed or boss damage, but no. It's still super fast and can kill guardians in just a few seconds. Now to list the cons, the first thing that comes to mind is that you need to keep an eye on your accuracy. This is because the Keystone Precise technique that grants 40% more damage if your accuracy is bigger than your life. As for budget, this build is cheap. You can get it destroying early in game maps with only around 60 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 120 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. For clear speed, I'll give it 9 out of 10. Boneshatter also creates a big pulse of damage when stunning enemies. That means that a single blow can kill an entire pack of monsters. Other than that, you stack a lot of attack speed that causes your Leap's Land to almost teleport you through the map. The boss damage is also great and deserves 9 out of 10. Using Berserk on bosses causes you to accumulate a lot of trauma stacks and deal huge amounts of damage. For the survivability, this build is surely a 10 out of 10, and I would even like to say 20 out of 10 if I could. This build achieves almost 200,000 armor and over 83% of all elemental resistance. All of that combined with the Juggernaut Ascendancy grants this character over 300,000 effective HP. Yes, it's crazy. Finally, in first place, we have this amazing Cyclone of Tumult Slayer with the Duelist class. The last PoE expansion brought the Transfigured gems with it. This means an alternative version of active skill gems. The Cyclone skill got the Cyclone of Tumult, that is a Cyclone wider and more powerful, but with the downside of being a lot slower. However, with an easy trick we can remove this downside and simply have a Cyclone with 33% more damage and 40% more area of effect. To list the pros of this build, I would start with clear speed. It's just amazing to be always moving and massacring all the poor enemies on the way. The boss damage is also incredible. Once the build is done, you are going to kill even the big bosses in just a matter of seconds. And above all of that, this build is very simple and easy to put together. Now, to list the cons, I would point a few important issues and I'd like to ask you to pay close attention here. You see, this build has a great survivability once it's done. But when you're leveling your character, you need to pace your progression, because you're always very close to enemies. If you're not prepared, you are going to die. So take the extra time to pick up a few more levels before progressing to a high tier content. Another useful tip about your survivability is how to deal with stuns. On this build, you get stun immunity with cluster duels, but not everyone can afford them right away. If that's your case, or if you're just having problems with stuns sooner, do this simple trick of picking those evasion nodes and this mastery. Believe me, it helps a lot. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 115 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 6 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Stampede boots that guarantee that your movement speed will always be 150% of its pace. This means that the downside of Cyclone of Tumult will mean absolutely nothing to us. For clear speed, I'll give it 9 out of 10. Cyclone never stops moving and have a huge area of effect, so you can farm your maps without the need to stop for casting or anything like that. It's just awesome and very satisfying. The boss damage is just amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. When this build is done, you're going to easily achieve over 15 million DPS that is more than enough to destroy bosses in just seconds. Now for the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build achieves over 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and a lot of instant life leech. Now, with the huge area of effect bonus from Cyclone of Tumult, you don't even need to stay very close to enemies on endgame, what gives you even more survivability. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think about my selection of melee builds? Please don't forget to tell me your thoughts in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building!